Hello everyone and welcome to another video. In today's video we're going to be working on the folio and we're gonna start the decorating part. I want to start by looking for a paper to place on the inside of the envelope, and I'm using papers from a subscription kit from Pink Monarch Prints, and I believe this is the September kit. I will link it down below. And then I end up going with this muted yellow piece of paper, and I'm just marking it with my pencil to see where I have to cut it. And then I cut it to size with my paper trimmer. And then I'm just gonna use some glue stick to glue it down. It was a bit fiddly, but in the end it worked out perfectly. You could also just open up the envelope on the top part to make it a bit more easy, but I just enjoyed the struggle, I guess. And then I also cut a strip to glue on the other side of the inside flap, if that makes sense. Just a small strip. I do this because this will make the entrance of the pocket a bit more sturdy, as envelopes aren't that thick, they're very thin, so just to add a bit more stability. And then I'm just gonna ink around the edges a bit more. And I'm using scorched timber throughout the entire project. And then I glue the pocket shut with a bit of art glitter glue, just a strip. And that's the inside of the pocket done. And then I'm going to look through the papers to see what I want to use on the outside. I love these papers. They're very muted colors and there's lots of greens and earth tones. And this is the paper I decide to use for the front. Normally when I use windowed envelopes, I will collage on the front to collage around the window, but this time I wanted to have one piece of paper, so I decided to cut down a regular envelope to use it as a template. It's the exact same envelope that I'm using for the folio, that way I'm sure that the size of the window will be exactly the same size. So I'm just cutting down the piece of paper with my trimmer, and then I'm gonna mark where I need to cut out the window. I then mark it with my pencil. Just trace it basically. but I couldn't really see the marks, so I traced it again. And then I'm just gonna cut it out with a ruler and a knife. And then I'm gonna ink around all the edges. And then I also run it through my sewing machine and sew around. I then forgot to zoom out, as you can see. I forget that a lot. Then I'm just gonna glue it down with some glue stick. But I also want to make a closure, so I decide to poke a hole first. I'm just gonna line it up with the top flap to see where I want the closure to be. And then I'm gonna take my smallest circle punch and punch out 2 circles of the same pattern paper that I used for the inside of the envelope. And I also cut out 2 cardstock circles to glue on the back side for more stability. And this is where I found out that I needed to zoom out. After gluing these 2 together, I'm also gonna add some hole reinforcers to create some extra space for the threads. And I glue them to the front and back. And then I ink around all the edges. Normally I use a bigger circle punch for these closures, but I actually really like the smaller ones. These are so cute. I'm gonna use these more often, I think. I then poke holes in both of them and pick some split pens, which are from Tim Holtz. And I'm gonna save the second one for when I start the other flap. And then I'm just gonna glue the entire flap to the folio. And I do that with some glue stick. I'm sorry you guys had to wait a bit for this video, but I was sick for a few days, so I couldn't really edit the video or make a voiceover. Now I'm just making sure that all the edges are glued down properly. And if they're not, I'm just gonna glue them down with some art glitter glue. And this is where I decided that I wanted the front flap to be a pocket as well. I want to make it a top loading pocket, so I slice off just a sliver with my knife and ruler. And now it's a pocket as well. I then ink up a bit on the inside, just the edges. And then I start looking for a few strips that I can glue on the inside to make it a bit more sturdy. And I end up going with these two strips, and I glue them. I ink them up on the top side and then I glue them down with glue stick. And then I went looking for some papers to use on this flap. I wanted something contrasting. And because this is the first thing you see when you open the lap book, I want it to be something that sticks out. And this is the paper that I end up using, and I believe this is part of the freebies from the kit from Kira Pace. I think it's Morris and Bloom, if I'm not mistaken. I will try to link it down below. And then I'm just folding it to size and cutting it with a ruler, or tearing I should say. And then I'm just gonna ink around the edges and glue it down. Oh, that's not right. I'm not gluing it down yet. I'm just gonna ink the edges and then I'm gonna sew around all the edges as well first. And then I want to glue it down, and then I decided to add the closure first. I almost forgot. So I actually lined it up and measured it with, well, I didn't measure. I eyeballed it, I should say, and then marked with a pencil where I need to poke a hole. I was so happy that I didn't forget. And then I glue it down with some glue stick. I also decided to use white threads this time. My old lapbook has everything in black threads, but I decided to go with white because I wanted to be a bit more softer look, and I actually really enjoy the white threads. This is a piece of a Tim Holtz backdrop, which I'm using for the back part of the envelope folder. And I'm just cutting it to size, but I couldn't really see my marks, so I had to redo it. Do you also lose your marks? It happens to me a lot. And after cutting it to size, I will ink around the edges, as always. Then took it to my sewing machine and sewn around the edges as well. And then just gonna glue it down with some glue stick. And I also like to make sure that all the edges are glued down properly, and if not, I will use some art glitter glue. And I'm sorry, I'm a bit in front of the camera. And I really like how it's turning out so far. And then I decided to use this piece of paper for the side flap. And that was my nose again. And my piercing too, by the way. Oh Lord. Then ink around the edges and glue it down. Oh, and I also sewn around the edges. And then I glue it down with some glue stick. I always like to vary my stitchings. That will create a bit more interest, I think. And I really like the muted colors, the greens and the scent tones. I'm very much enjoying the nature vibe. Then for the inside of the top flap, I'm using a piece of paper from Craft a Clock. I forgot what the name of the actual set is. I believe it was Vibe of Vintage, something like that. But yeah, I have these papers for a long time already, but I haven't really used it. I made a folio with it once, but then didn't finish that one. It was actually when I first started junk journaling. I found a tutorial, I cannot even remember who it was from, and I end up not finishing the project. It wasn't really what I was looking for, I guess. But yeah, so these papers have been in my stash for quite a while, and I was like, oh, these actually fit the papers that I'm using now, so why not use them? Then I'm just inking around the edges and glue it down. I think I'm also gonna sew. Probably. Yep. Please let me know in the comments if you like to see the entire process like this. I mean, I'm just gluing down pieces of paper to the panels. I mean, if you guys think I should skip that and just do like real projects, like I'm gonna make some text to go inside the pockets, I could just show that instead of showing you gluing down papers as well, if you know what I mean. Just let me know if you guys mind or not. And now I'm going to make 2 journaling cards for both the pockets. And I'm then looking for papers to back it with. It's actually a piece of one of the Tim Holtz backdrops again, and I'm gonna back it so that we can write on it. So I chose a neutral paper. Then I'm just gonna ink around the edges, but then I decided to round the corners, and I'm using the smallest setting. And then for the bigger journal card, I'm using this piece of Tim Holtz paper. I don't know which set this is from. I got some loose papers from someone on Facebook, so I didn't really have the big paper pad, just a few sheets, so I don't know which one this is from. But I really liked the flowers on this, so I decided to use that because I thought it fit the theme. And I also want to back this one, and I decide to do that with a piece of tea dyed paper. And I'm just gonna glue it down with some glue stick. And then I'm gonna use a bone folder to make sure that it's stuck. And this will also help to remove any crinkles. Yeah, it will really smoothen it out, as you can see here. And then I'm just gonna cut it to size with my scissors. And I'm also gonna round the corners of this one. And then ink around the edges again on both sides. And I then decided that I wanted to do some stenciling, but I'm first gonna see what color I want to use. At first I was thinking vintage photo, but it was a bit too reddish, and I didn't really think it fit the scorched timber, so I end up just using ground espresso. And then I'm using the splatter stencil from Tim Holtz. Coffee stains, I believe, sorry. And I'm just gonna do some stenciling here and there. And I then also like to do some splatter stamping actually. And I do that with off stamping, so I will stamp it on a regular piece of paper first before I stamp it on the actual project, and that will give a bit more depth. And then I'm going to pick a piece of the Tim Holtz craft cardstock, and I'm looking to see which color fits the closures best, and I'm deciding on this darker piece of brown, darker tint, and I'm cutting a strip so that I can make some tabs. And I'm absolutely obsessed with this paper. It's so cool that you can sand it down with a sand disc, and then the cardstock, the craft color will come through. And it makes it look so grungy, and it's amazing. I'm in love with this cardstock. I bought one pack and I only have the neutral set, but I now also want all the other colors, obviously. So I'm just gonna sand down the edges with a sanding disc to grunge it up a bit. And I then attach them with some art glitter glue. And then I'm also gonna sew. And after the sewing, I'm also gonna stamp a bit. And I'm using Field Notes and Eccentric from Tim Holtz. And for these stamps, I'm using VersaFine Claire Fallen Leaves. And I tried using stamps that I didn't use before. And then I went looking for some embellishments, and these bits and pieces are from the same paper set from Craft a Clock. These are all fussy cuts. I don't really mind white borders, but I don't want them to be as white as they are, so I ink around the edges to make it less white. And I think that's just a huge difference. And then I'm gonna add a bit of this white mesh. I think it's mesh paper, I'm not sure. But I just want a little piece behind the flower to add more interest and a bit more layering, I guess. And then I also add a ticket from 14.9 Market. And I believe I will also add one of the stamps that is from the same set. I absolutely adore these tickets. Yeah, I'm obsessed. And then I'm just gonna stick everything down with some art glitter glue. I'm sorry, talking is hard, as always. And then I'm looking through my Tim Holtz snippets to see if there's something small that I can add. And I find this tiny strip, which I don't know what it says, to be honest, but it looks nice, so I added that. And with that, this ticket is done, or not ticket, journal card, sorry. And then moving on to the next one, I'm looking through this Tim Holtz sets to see what I want to use. And I end up using just a few leaves, I believe. And then I remembered the photos that I've got, and I actually have a printable set from LuiseHEINZL as well, and I end up using a photo from that. And you can get this set on her Etsy shop, and I will link it down below as well. First I was thinking about using a frame, but they didn't really fit, so I didn't do that, and I just ended up roughing up the edges. I really liked the flowers, but most of them were just a bit too big, so I end up not using any flowers and I just used the leaves. Then I decided to add one of the Tim Holtz number strips and a piece of lace, and I chose a bit of a teal colored piece of lace, and then I attached that with a stapler. And here you see me roughening up the edges of the strip with my fingernails, and that actually works very well. And then I'm just gonna glue down everything except for this strip, of course. I'm gonna use a stapler for that, and my stapler has copper colored staples I mean. And then I'm gonna add one more ticket from Tim Holtz, and these are all from the ticket book. And then I'm just gonna stick everything down. And then on the back side I wanted to do a bit more stamping, so I'm using fallen leaves again. And then I'm also using the Kathy Holden Sign Here stamp set and add a signature. And that's it for the tags, and that's actually also it for this part of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed the first part of the decorating, and if you are crafting along with me, please let me know. I'm very curious to see who is crafting along. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have, don't forget to like the video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!